Hello. I'd like to share with you an overview of my history related to art. To begin at the beginning, a sample of a 4-year-old expressing herself like most other 4-year-olds. No child prodigy here. As I grew older, faces fascinated me, and I found myself drawing profiles of other students. No matter that I had not learned proportion yet. As a young adult, I was an art major at the University of Southern Mississippi. Then, married to a naval officer, I took art classes available at various locations where we were stationed. San Diego. This is called open color. We used a 4-inch woodwork paint brush. First, 3 puddles of color were set out: dark brown, slightly darkened yellow ochre, and well-lightened yellow ochre. The contours of the figure were drawn. Then the darkest areas were painted in their general shape with the brush dipped in the dark color, then squished around on the newspaper until the brush was lightly coated. Then the brush was squished onto the dark shapes, allowing the color to fan out at its edges. The mid-tone color was next, using the same method, following the general shape. Then the lightest color was applied on the lightest areas, making all the edges bleed over the contours where necessary. A dark color on a small brush was used to reinstate the contours of the figure. The green background was added later. Philadelphia. Still life with a palette knife. The paints were all applied with the palette knife, mixing the colors right on the canvas and following the shapes where possible. Pensacola, broken color. Similar to pointillism, but the colors are applied with flat, horizontal brush strokes, light over dark. Jacksonville, portrait with a palette knife. Again, the paint is applied exclusively with a palette knife. The effect here is a bit impressionistic. Tampa, Daniel Green workshop. Daniel Green is a current master artist, well known among art circles, who paints many different subjects, including portraits of senators, corporate executives, and many others. His technique is to mix many portrait colors in small puddles on his palette, so he can find each color immediately while his model poses. I found this method too wasteful for me, as the many unused paints were disposed of after his session. However, his teaching was very valuable to me. Etc., etc. So many teachers, so many techniques. It's a wonder I'm not schizophrenic. A turning point occurred in the mid-90s. We visited the Appleton Museum in Ocala, Florida, where a special exhibit showed portraits done in the old master style from the Florence Academy in Italy. I identified so strongly with the style that I located the docent to ask about the school. He recommended not the Florence Academy, as it is connected to universities and must have exams and stick to a schedule of study, so would not be ideal with my age and experience. He recommended the Charles H. Cecil Studios in Florence. The same techniques, similar teaching, but different in that it is an atelier. The classes are taught on an individual basis and can progress to more advanced classes by becoming capable. My late husband strongly encouraged me to apply and offered to be my house husband. I was thrilled to be accepted, and we rented an apartment there in 1997 for my initial classes. Florence, Italy, a new start on my art, a new opportunity for adventures. This is Charles Cecil in his upper room, his private studio, with a model painting, and several students. As headmaster, Charles gives critiques twice a week and teaches art history with slides every Thursday evening. Classes are all in English. Charles is an American with an outstanding art resume who has lived in Florence for about 40 years. Most of the 35 to 40 students are 19 to 20 years old, and 5 or 6 are grown-ups like me. The first classes are drawings of plaster casts in the mornings and a live nude in the afternoon, all in charcoal. We had to learn their special method of seeing. We moved on to live models for portraits after several cast assignments, taking about 2 weeks to complete a drawing, not a sketch. You may remember 50 Shades of Gray. We must master unlimited shades of gray to learn about value. Moving on to color, this is a painting in progress. We begin to learn the tools of old masters. The palette for skin colors is limited to only black, white, red, and yellow. We learn to mix any complexion or nuance in shading with only these 4 paints. Next, our models sit with natural light, not sunlight, coming from above and slightly to the side, as in a Rembrandt portrait, to give us soft shadows on the face. This creates chiaroscuro, which means light and dark. We strive for a light, clear side and a dark, mysterious side to give depth and dimension. Caravaggio's work is an excellent example. As opposed to chiaroscuro, sfumato means smoky. It is the use of extremely fine, soft shading instead of line to delineate form and features, to evaporate like smoke, soft, imperceptible transitions between colors and tones. It was created by Leonardo da Vinci. At my school and when I teach my classes, the mantra is blur, blur, blur. The method of seeing I spoke of is called the sight size method. This method teaches one to see using a technique as follows. The artist stands back from the easel in order to depict the subject, which is positioned so that it appears alongside the canvas in a proportion true to life. In this way, the eye is able to assess shape, value, and color effectively, and the image is seen as a whole from the start. This method has been used throughout time, including Titian, Van Dyck, Velázquez, Rayburn, Lawrence, Whistler, and John Singer Sargent. These are photos taken at the last sitting with the model beside the portrait, as they were for the 30 hours it took to complete the painting. You might be interested in watching the steps taken in painting O.C., my husband. He also sat for 30 hours, listening to opera and symphonies on his earbud in his hidden ear. Cecil Studio's advanced classes were invited to present cartoons to apply for a painting large murals on the walls of a church. A cartoon is a rough painting done to suggest the final painting. The plans included angels. So, being artists who paint what we see, the dilemma was what to use for reference to paint wings. One of the participating students went home to her British family estate for a long weekend at this time. As fate would have it, one of the swans on their moat died. She cut off the wings, froze them, and carried them to Florence. How she got it through customs is a story about Italian culture. She promptly sent them to a local taxidermist, and voila, here were the wings. Cartoons of winged angels followed. The advanced class was not selected for the job, but there was stiff competition, and the exercise was a productive experience. Since then, I've been painting commissioned portraits as well as family members. You might recognize our PEO sisters, Patty Goff and Bess Cochran with Steve. My daughter Gwen has named this costumed model Prince Kahil. Woman with Vision. This model came in to pose having been crying. She spoke no English, so we didn't know what was wrong. She put on her orange sweater, sat down, took a deep breath, and assumed her pose. There was something so determined in her eyes. I tried to see and understand the feeling she presented by studying her eyes deeply, wanting to capture that woman of vision. Granddaughter Amy Alton. The lace of her shawl I found to be much easier to paint than I feared. Amy was so thrilled, and I was deeply honored when this painting won Best in Show at an exhibit at the Cultural Center of Ponte Vedra. Self-portrait 20 years ago in a mirror. Maybe there's a bit of determination here too. I also teach workshops at my studio. 2 students here using the sight size method. As the years fly by and we ponder where we stand in our life, remember, it is never too late to restart. As Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss. Adventures of all kinds will follow. I restarted at Cecil Studios in 1997 at the age of 62, and it made me feel young again. I am a living example of a late bloomer. Thank you so much for sharing my senior adventure. I hope that the next time you encounter a painted portrait, you will look for a feeling that you might almost know the subject, a feeling of recognition, of understanding, something to identify with and wonder about. Perhaps a glimpse of the soul? It's just something in the eyes.